Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Kitchings Table. We are glad to be with you this morning, as always, on every Tuesday morning to bring you something we feel will be of inspiration or enlightenment, knowledge, wisdom, or just to give you something to think about. That's what we do here at the Kitchings Table every Tuesday morning. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Ms. Ronline Cannady. Good morning, Ronline.
Good morning, Earl. How are you doing this morning?
Well, it's a Tuesday morning, and I'm here, and I'm glad to be with you, and looking forward to our subject matter for today.
Thank you.
So, Ronline, we have now been into the results of the 2024 presidential election. Now, here it is. What, 3 weeks later?
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I'm still having some. I don't know what I would call it, but I'm still not settled. I guess that would be the best way to put it. I'm still not settled with the results, and not because of political parties. No, that's not it. Just because of the outcome of who will be becoming the president of the United States again, and
Mhm.
because of who that individual is, and because of their lack of character, their lack of integrity, their lack of empathy, sympathy, all the adverbs you can think of that deal with a person's character intellectually, socially, emotionally. Um, that individual is just not suited, in my opinion. And I'm have to make sure I say, in my opinion, for this position. We found out that the first time, and it seems as though America is not ready for a female to be in charge of this country. They can be in charge of everything else but that one position. And after seeing the results, I must go back and say that in the 2016 election, America did vote for a female president. The popular vote did vote in Hillary Clinton as the president of the United States, but the Electoral College said different. And in my opinion, it is time for the Electoral College to go away. The only office in all of America where we have a college to determine the outcome. Everything else is based on popular vote in a democracy. So we now know that that particular thing that the writers of the Constitution put in place back in the 1700s does not work anymore. It does not work anymore. And at least it does not work for the 2016 and the election, which had that occurred for Hillary Clinton, she probably would have had 2 terms in office, and we will now be looking at who would be taking over that position now. But as fate would have it, and because we have to go through some things in order to understand some things, we are here where we are in 2024, November 26th, and we just have to see what happens. We've been through tough times before. I don't know if, and because we don't know what will be coming, but on the horizon we can see what we anticipate to be changes that will dismantle some things of this democracy, this experiment, as they call it, this democratic experiment that this country has been on for the last 400 years. It will now change some of that. So we'll have to just wait and see. And fingers crossed, and every other thing you can do to try to make good luck happen. I don't know if those things will even matter anymore. We just going to have to, as they say, ride it out and see what happens. And hopefully, higher powers have put some things into place that we don't know about that will occur, that will be like game changing to us, to make sure that we understand who is really in charge. With that, I will have you make your thoughts known to our viewers and our listeners.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing yours. And I do understand your disappointment. Uh, I've been disappointed for a very long time, for years now, just watching and, just really understanding what American history is and where it's been, throughout the years and what it actually means to us as minorities in America. So, if you want to know where I am in this process, I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Ricky Jones. Dr. Ricky Jones helped me understand um, why he felt the way that he does about the election. It's like Americans and Americans of color, any color, if you are a minority in that process, we have gotten too complacent. We forgot what our people were fighting for, our generations that were here long before we came along. And they wanted us to pay attention to what they were going through. When I think about my grandparents, that's the earliest generation that I knew, my grandparents, when they were coming through, I just watched their struggles, not knowing exactly what the struggles were. And it wasn't until I started going through those, as they say, walking into their shoes to try to understand, like, okay, I'm working every day. I'm, doing what I need to do for my son. And it's like, no matter what I was doing, trying to save money or what have you, that mortgage note, if it wasn't the mortgage, that was on a fixed note, right? And so but the utilities, and we weren't home that often. So, the utilities were sky high and that kind of thing. So it's like, no matter which way I tried to do, it wasn't enough. And when I understood that I wasn't getting paid, I'm doing the same job that my counterparts were doing, but I wasn't getting paid the same wage. So I was wondering, like, okay, how are they able to do all of the things that they're able to do? And I am having a hard time. And it wasn't until someone just really made it very clear to me that, yeah, even though you're doing the same job, doing the same thing, and I even have you training, you will not get the $3 more that your counterparts are getting. It's just not going to happen. So, and I've always dealt with industries where it was gender driven by males. So, with that being said, Earl, I hear you, and when I listen to Dr. Ricky Jones and what he said, sometimes, in order for us to really wake up out of the coma, we have to go through what they did back in the days of Saul, when they thought they wanted Saul to rule their kingdom. And that's where the book of Lamentations come in. They were wailing, they were crying every single day. So if we have to get to that point to where we're in, that's how we're going to understand what is needed on the next go round, to make sure that it's not just a presidential election that we need to be worried about. It's every election that we need to worry about, so that all of the counterparts can come together and get what we need done. I turn it back over to you, Earl.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Ronline, because we certainly have a lot to think about, consider, uh, look back on, think about going forward. So there's a lot. I'm just curious. You talked about they're not giving you the extra $3 in that paycheck for you. What was the minimum wage when you were a teenager?
What it was, 325.
325.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Try 85 cents.
Right. And then I was going to say, and if I was a waitress, it was 235 or somewhere like that.
Well, my first part-time job working in the kitchen of a, and no pun intended, of a hotel, it was 85 cents an hour.
Mm.
85 cents an hour. Now they're making $15 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So from that aspect, it's come a long ways. It's come a long way since you were making three some odd dollars an hour, but with
And then
progress,
check, and then check this out, Earl. When you talk about the 85 cents an hour, your mortgage note probably was like what, 178.
I didn't have a mortgage note.
I'm just saying, a
So
mortgage note.
I
Yes.
I wouldn't have any idea what it was.
Well, your parents' mortgage note was like
$100,
once, like
hundred and some dollars a
178.
month. Yeah,
Yes.
100 and some odd dollars a month.
Right. And now, you're talking about making the $15 an hour, but now your mortgage note or your mortgage note, let me start with that. Maybe is like 22, $2,800. And then the rent is maybe like 18 to 2000, $2,300. So it's like, do you ever catch up? You know, and the answer is no. You have to do something in addition to that wage job.
It's not meant for you to catch up, Ronline.
Of
For
course not.
the for
This is
the
still America.
average
Yeah, this is
the
still America.
average middle income individual or family, it's not meant for you to catch up. Uh, this country is built on the backs of middle income America.
Mm-hmm.
Always has been, always will be, because those who make far more and exceed far more than what middle America makes, uh, that is such a small population, and they only care about their little circle. So they aren't of any help when you look back at how much money was spent on this past election, how much money was raised and spent. Think about all the good things that could have been done with that same amount of money being put in the right places.
Mm-hmm.
So the $1 billion plus that was raised and spent to try to elect one candidate, all that went to the media people, the printing companies who printed the signs and the buttons and the decals and the bumper stickers, the TV ads, the radio ads, all that. That's where all that went. TV stations and TV networks got real invested with a lot of investment monies that were given to them based on these ads running. So a lot of money could have been used differently. Uh, but anyway, so our topic for today, our topic for today, moments that changed America. Moments that changed America. And I've identified what I feel are some moment changing events that happened in this country that for good or for better have moved this country along. There have been a lot of changes that have been made. They haven't always been the best, and some decisions haven't always been for the folks who needed it most. And some things have been done not in the better interest of humanity, have devastated some things, and when we talk about the environment, when we talk about the fact that the most dangerous animal on the planet It's not the big and the strong, whether it's in the ocean or on land. It's not those. They do what they do to survive. That premise is they do what they do to survive. They don't have any other reasons for doing what they do. But when you create pluses and minuses and which side you're going to be on and which one deserves it more and which one needs it more and which one has been destructive or destroyed more and built up more, because it's almost a balance. I mean, you do a lot of positive things on one side, but then the destruction and the negative things on the other side. So if we were doing more positives and less negatives, where would the world be if we were trying to grow the whole world to be about humanity and not about money?
And as you say, follow the money. And this is why all of the elections are important, because it all surrounds around the
Right.
money that is either for your local government, your state government. And, when I think about the number of hospitals that are closing,
Yes.
Your health care has been affected
Yeah.
by the last 20 years and will be affected even more. So, yeah, we have to be mindful of how to take care of our families, ourselves, because if we live long enough, we are going to be on Medicare, right? And so, with
Yes.
with that being the end game, it's like, okay, who's in Congress that is saying, what our medical care is going to look like, when that's the thing that we're depending on. And the
Right.
fact that, at this time, it looks like it's mainly going to be threatened again. So, um, all I can say is, as you say, the electoral college that needs to be done away with, um, because it is affecting our democracy, you know, and
Okay.
everything else. Yeah, where's the fairness in that?
Well, that's for another topic.
Of course.
So today we will share some of the most impactful events that have changed American life and culture, as documented primarily by Time Magazine, and some that will stand as milestones to never be reversed, having decades of influence and impact on the American society.
And let me stop you right there, Earl, because some people called me out on the carpet about some things that we said before the election took place. Well, on the day of the election, actually. And I want to take from Albert Chester Jr. when he was running for Congress. He said he wasn't trying to take anything from anybody. He was trying to do some things that was going to bring about a change. And, in this case, it was like we already saw a lot of things that were taken away. We just didn't want those things to be taken away even farther, So now, it's here. And I'm gonna turn that back over to you.
Okay, well, here we are. So we're going to just go into our moments that have been life changing, game changing here in America. So we're going to start most recently with the 2024 election. Donald Trump is reelected as the first president elected as a convicted felon and a twice impeached former president. A convicted felon and twice impeached former president. And the only reason why he wasn't impeached out of office is because the Senate at that time was run by the Republicans and they would not make that decision. Kamala Harris became the second woman nominated by a political party to run for president. First woman of color nominated by a political party, but the second woman nominated by a political party to run for president. That's in 2024. 2008, 2012, Barack Obama becomes the first Black man elected twice as president. Not once, but twice. So 2008, 2012. Now we'll go back, talk about some other things. For instance, 1994, the midterm elections go to the Republicans. And that was a time when Newt Gingrich was very popular. And they took control of Congress for the first time since 1954. When they say took control of Congress, that means both the House and the Senate. And that was something that they built their campaign on, the contract with America. 10 promises that the GOP vowed to enact if they took power. They always seem to come up with these plans. Contract with America, make America great again, 10 promises, Project 2025. They have these playbooks, but really they don't go very far. So they came along with that, and through legislative control and partisan tactics that had once been considered impermissible, the post-1994 congressional Republicans made it much more difficult for liberal ideas to succeed in the United States. 1994. Now I'm going to go way back, Ronline, to 1915. I'm going to be like, Earl, that's a big jump. Yes, it is.
It's a method to your madness. Go ahead.
There's a method to the madness. 1915, the Great Migration begins. And a lot of people may not be familiar with the Great Migration. So let me inform and educate. So the people, men, women, and children who participated in the Great Migration to the north, primarily Black people, left the South and moved to the north, primarily to places like New York, Chicago, and anything in that kind of line. Detroit, that's where they moved to. They wanted to get out of the South, looking for a better opportunity and a better way of life. And that did happen. It states here that 6 million Black people escaped the South from Jim Crow South to the North and the West starting in 1915. And what we don't really hear a lot about is that migration that went west. We hear about the North, the Midwest, Chicago, St. Louis, Detroit, New York, Boston, places like that. But going out west to places such as a large population of Black people settled in Denver, Colorado, a large group of Black people. And then going further than that, they got to California and helped settle Los Angeles. So 1915, that was what they wanted to do. That's what they did. And that's how things came around. Just, as part of that whole time that was going on during World War I. And a lot of things were happening. I mean, so many issues. But again, Black people were at the crux of this migration period. Then 10 years after that, in August of 1925, we talk about the March on Washington in 1968 and 66, 67. Well, in 1925, the KKK marched on Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. And they marched down Pennsylvania Avenue. There's a photograph, and they were in their robes carrying not only the flags of, I guess, their membership, but also the American flags and state flags. And this was pretty shocking to the country at the time, but they were out there in full force. And the thing about that particular march, Ronline, is they had full garb of the KKK with the robes and the hoods, but they did not bring the mask down over the faces, so you could actually see their faces at that time. Mm-hmm. And of course, Washington, D.C. being the capital of the United States, and because there's such a large population of Black people in Washington, D.C. now, I don't know about in 1925, things could have really gotten ugly in 1925 if something like that had occurred today. And who's to say it won't happen in 2025, 100 years later? Who's to say it won't happen? Because you have these factions of groups who believe in white supremacy, in Nazism, and things of that nature, and believe that this country only belongs to them and nobody else did anything to help build this country but them. So they want everybody to go back to where they came from. Ironically, they never speak about themselves going back to Europe and leaving the country back like they found it to the Native Americans. They don't tend to speak about it from that platform. But 1925, August, the KKK marched in Washington, D.C. down Pennsylvania Avenue. And there is no bigger avenue, street in America than Pennsylvania Avenue. Mm-hmm. Leads right to the Capitol. And you can see the Capitol building in the background of this picture. And oh my goodness. 1932, Tommy Dorsey invents the gospel blues. Now you might say, well, why is that so important? Because music is a part of America. The gospel and the blues are part of Black America's contribution to the artistic values and the artistic avenues of this country. So Tommy Dorsey in Chicago in 1932 composed songs. Take My Hand, Precious Lord. He composed that song. That was inspired by his wife's death and childbirth. And he was the person that started the gospel blues. And you had many singers, Mahalia Jackson, Aretha Franklin, Whitney Houston, singing some of his music. It tied into the American Civil Rights Movement with Dr. King, and supporters were saying some of his messaging lyrics of his words. Tommy Dorsey invents the gospel blues in 1932. So if you're singing gospel or you're singing blues or a combination, Tommy Dorsey is the man that started it. 1951, fast forward a little bit, Barbara Johns Walks Out, as this title here. 1951 at Moulton High School in Farmville, Virginia, school for Black students. 16-year-old Barbara Johns led a walkout for 400 Black students to protest inadequate facilities at segregated Robert R. Moulton High School in Farmville, Virginia, vowing to boycott classes until the local all-white school board addressed their complaints. This is 1951. A few years before Rosa Parks decided she wasn't going to give up her seat on that bus. So you had students, pressing the issue. And this was before the Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954. So again, this ties into some things that you may not have heard about or known about, but this is what these students felt compelled to do because they felt they were being wrong and segregation just did not sit well. So that's 51. Then one of the most devastating.
And before you do that, let's go to our break and then come back to the devastating moment in history.
This is the Kitchings Table. Every Tuesday morning, you can catch us right here for our information and news and facts, knowledge and wisdom about a lot of different things here. I'm your host, Earl Kitchings, along with my co-host, Ronline Cannady. Every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., we like to bring you the Kitchings table. If you discuss family issues at your kitchen table, then this is the basis of what this show is about, to discuss issues, to bring forth things that may be of importance, historical things, fun things. We don't limit it to anything that we feel may be of significance to you. So this is the Kitchings table, and we welcome you to join us. Send in your comments, send in your thoughts and or questions to us so that we can do a better job of bringing you this information. So, Ronline, we're going to talk about, there have been some devastating issue deaths, murders, if you will, in this country. I don't think one had the impact. When we hear about presidents and president nominees and civil rights workers being assassinated, those have been some difficult moments for America and people of color to deal with. But I put this one on simply because of the gravity of it. And in August of 1955, as we approach 2025, 70 years ago, come August of 2025, Emmett Till was murdered. Emmett Till was murdered, and Emmett Till was from Chicago, a teenager, went to Mississippi, and doing what he probably had done many times before in Chicago, he saw a white woman and he made a gesture to her or at her. And because of him doing that, the men of that city were not going to let that ride, and they disfigured him to the point where it was just, he was unrecognizable. Mm-hmm. And I think when the news came out, it shocked the news media and communities. But I think the more shocking thing about what happened was the fact that Emmett Till's mother told the public and everybody else, do not close my son's casket. She wanted the world to see. She wanted the world to see just how brutal some factions of American citizenry are in this country, and at what extremes they will go to let you know who's in charge. And it was unfortunate. And that became a movie. I haven't seen that movie, but that is probably one of the most gravitating murders to ever happen in this country, from the standpoint of what was done, how it was done, and the fact that here was a mother grieving so much that her disfigured son's face, she wanted everybody to see it. And as we've spoken about, when someone is sick or ill or they pass, you may not want that image to be in your head going forward. You want to remember them in a very positive light, from a very lively moment in their lives, not something that is so negative and detrimental to your memory that you can't shake it.
But yeah, I remember what you said about, she said, I want them to see what they did to my boy, and that was monumental to me when you brought that out. And all we're talking about is humanity and things like that, and then we turn around and do something like that to a human being.
Yes. I mean, and Mamie Bradley Till was Emmett Till's mother. And the sadder part of this whole incident is the individuals who perpetrated this murder got found innocent. Mm-hmm. Did not serve one day. So that happened in August of 1955. May of 1960, Ronline, the birth control pill is approved, and that has an effect on the matter of Roe versus Wade. Birth control was one of the most significant achievements of the 20th century. Uh, Contraception has long been one of the things that mankind has dealt with, and a pill was finally developed for women to take to prevent pregnancy. And I've heard many things about, well, why didn't prevent make a pill for men? You know, a pill for men, you don't have to worry about it at all. Let the men get sick. Let the men have some of the outcomes, and
Bear the burden, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
since men can't have the baby, well, give them this part, and don't give a woman the pill. Make a man take a pill every day. So
And
again,
see, with that,
huh?
I just want to say something about that. So, um, for those of people who felt like I was wrong in my comments pertaining to abortion, it had nothing to do with abortion for me. What it had everything to do with is the punishments, the sanctions that becomes behind what an abortion is. So it's like, okay, that's only geared to the woman, but how did she get pregnant? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and unless the punishment is going to be for both people,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, no, two people, it took two to be
It will
involved.
always take two.
Right. It took two. Well, I mean, now it's we have volunteers in that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about procreation in itself and that kind of thing. So it's like, okay, is the other party going to be punished for this person getting pregnant? You know, and if not, then it's like, okay, no, then you have no business being in their business like that. And then you putting our healthcare professionals at risk, because it's like anything, you're pregnant or whatever, and you may lose this baby. They may think that you're in here for abortion. No, I'm not. I'm not going to take care of you. So you got another risk going on. So it's all. We've just made a mess. I'll just say that we've just made a mess.
But one of the things that was written was that contraception or the birth control basically affected a woman's capacity to control their own body.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that is what was at the crux of that issue for the election: women having control of their
Their body.
own bodies.
Right. And
And that's
now
all we were talking about.
right. And to that point, here I am fighting human sex trafficking. Okay. We
Mm-hmm.
have trafficking rings going on where young girls are no longer allowed to go home because they are now breeding babies,
Mm-hmm.
against their will. So, I mean, it goes up the chain.
Yeah,
So with Homeland Security getting involved, there's not enough alphabets involved in order to get this thing under control. And now we just gave free reign to it.
right. And this is going to be something that, for all the women that were pro the president elect, your daughters, granddaughters, your nieces, they will be affected.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the way uh, Roe versus Wade was struck down, because of the fact that now you want to punish women who get pregnant, not the men who impregnate them, but the women must again bear the burden, because there's some other ways that some societies deal with things like this. I'm not going to go into exactly how they minimize men from doing things like this in the future, but again, the woman is asked to bear the burden.
Mm-hmm.
And if the woman must bear the burden, then I agree with you, Ronline. Then, for unwanted pregnancy, the male should also carry some of that same burden or some of that same uh, results or punishments that should happen. So again, this will be an issue that goes on for. It's going to be a hot issue for the next 4 years because when those people who have the power and their children, children, children's run into this situation, are you going to give them a pass? Are you going to turn your head? Are you going to say, well, it's okay for that daughter or granddaughter, whomever of the senator so and so to get an abortion? But Miss Joe America or Josephine America rather, whose daughter got impregnated by her uncle, who won't get punished, but you're going to punish a child. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see how this goes when it comes down to the real issues. But 1960, the birth control pill was approved. 1963, the Children's March in Birmingham, May of 63, another one of the ugly moments in American societal uh, milestones. Civil rights was from 1958 to 1965 for the most part, and 68 for almost 10 years. Civil rights was an issue, and when the march got to the point where children are marching to make a difference in the way life is done in America, it speaks volumes. And when you want to extinguish the lives of children or harm them in such a way that you wouldn't harm anybody, anything like this, but uh, to set dogs on people, to turn water hoses on people, to beat people with batons and things of that nature because they want their rights as a human being, uh, as an American, to be heard and go on unchallenged from the standpoint of where you can go, where you can sit, where you can eat, where you can travel. These were some of the things that happened in the 60s. So when the children got involved in the Civil Rights March, this definitely made the stakes at what was going on in America that much more important. But following that, Ronline, so that was May of 63. Um, Within a year, the Civil Rights Act was amended. President Lyndon Johnson had a lot to do with the change of things here in America when he started signing things into law about civil rights. But Howard Smith of Virginia offered a one-word amendment to civil rights, adding sex to the list of forms of discrimination that was prohibited by the act. Up until he did that, sex was going to be a civil rights issue that was not going to be considered strongly. But when Representative Howard Smith of Virginia put that in there, that was a game changer. And what it did was it allowed not just women, but specifically uh, white women got their protections extended. So did black men and women. So that was a major piece of the civil rights issue, civil rights thing that was going on during that time. So those are some of the acts that I identified. Uh, One last one is affirmative action goes unchallenged in October of 1971. For much of the 20th century, unions, private employees, and government agencies affirmatively discriminated based on race.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about getting a good job, if you were the wrong color, you couldn't get it. If you were the wrong gender, you could not get it. Everything was pretty much set up so that many white males could dominate the landscape. Black men get a little bit of opportunity, but a lot of that has changed. And that's why we're talking about fighting so hard, because We don't want to go back to pre 1971, back to the 60s. That's what Kamala Harris meant when she said we're not going back, um, because a lot of things changed. And relating to Kamala Harris, the state of California passed Proposition 13 in 1978, and Proposition 13 represented a new unwillingness to view government as a provider of positive benefits to all members of a community. So they had their own thing going on in California where they wanted to limit property taxes, making it hard to build communities in the future. So those are some of the things that happened that helped change America. And I will turn it over to you for your Black History moment.
All right. Thank you so much, Earl. Look like I'm having, I guess I'm back online with that. So my presentation to you today is, remember this lady? The moments that changed America, the youngest inaugural poet in American history, Amanda Gorman. We learned about her in 2021 when Joe Biden, who's now the president, and Kamala Harris became the first Black vice president of the United States of America. And I'm going to close out by reading her poem as a reminder for where we are today. The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman. When days comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. And the norms and notions of what just isn't always just this. And yet the dawn is ours. Before we knew it, somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so that we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to no one and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we've grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. And if we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made, that is the promise glade. The hill we climb, if only we dare, it's because being American is more than a pride we inherited. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust. For while we have our eyes on the future, history has made its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour. But within it, we found the power. I'm going to end right there since that is our time. But I wanted to give Amanda Gorman what she deserved in this moment of our Black history in America.
Well, thank you, Ronline. And that is our time for today. So we will thank everyone for joining us today here on the Kitchings table. And we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 10 a.m. As we always say, go out and do something good for somebody today. For myself, W.R. Kitchings and Ronline Cannady, have a great week.
Thank you.